9/11 for the first responders is a little like Pearl Harbor for the people that were in Pearl Harbor. It's an incident like no other, and hopefully there'll never be another one like that. But there were so many overlaying issues for the incident. It was an attack on your country. It was an attack on other public safety people. 400 plus public safety people died in that one location within a couple of hours. That's never happened in this country before. We, the responders, were sucked into an emotional hurricane. As we were deployed, our role was to work with California Task Force 1, which is the LA City FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Team, and the New York Fire Department to help with the emotional impact of the incident. At the time, I was in charge of the Los Angeles Fire Department's Critical Incident Stress Management Team. New York Fire had reached out to our fire department and asked for us to send a team back because their team had been disbanded before the incident.
So during the World Trade Center bombing back in 2001, I was a member of the Critical Incident Stress Management Team. There were 23 of us. There were a group of 7 of the members who departed LA to New York on the day of 9/11. And on the 15th of September, the remainder of the team went over via commercial airline. My role at that time was, as a peer support member, was really just to be at ground zero and to offer any type of, emotional support to the first responders and the volunteers that were there. And it was a little different because, we had come so far, and that was some of the comments that we got, like, wow, you're here from Los Angeles. You came a long way. And our response was, yeah, we're right around the corner.
When we arrived in New York, the New York Fire Department knew that they had lost in excess of 300 uniformed members. Various police departments that had responded had lost in excess of 100 members. So it was an incident like no other. That much loss makes the agency much less efficient, much less capable to fulfill their mission. In addition to having lost all of those people, the agencies had many layers of families that were working for them. So the people that were working at the pile were often looking for relatives, their fathers, their brothers, their cousins. It was very, very, very personal for many of the people that were at the incident. That spilled over to their coworkers and created a level of stress that is probably not seen anywhere else other than a battlefield, and maybe not seen at the level that it was during 9/11, even at a battlefield.
When we first got there, it was really, really emotional for all of us. First of all, we left our families at home. We didn't really know what was going on. Nobody knew. We didn't know if it was just going to be isolated in New York, which obviously it wasn't, but was it going to come to Los Angeles? So those emotions were difficult. And knowing that we were going to be away from our families for 2 weeks, that was taxing on us as the first responders, even though we had a task for us to go over there. Once we were there, we were greeted and we made our way eventually down to ground zero. The things that I remember vividly were, we were there early, so a lot of the things hadn't really gotten set up yet. Car alarms were going off. It was just, there was still debris in the air. You could feel, the chaos and the tension.
As I think the uniformed service, public safety, military, all have a culture and they all have a subculture. If you haven't been in one of those uniforms, you really don't understand the world that they live in, going to emergencies all the time and so on. If you're an outsider, if you haven't worn a uniform or worn one recently, in some cases, it's hard to interact and understand those individuals.
For me personally, I think the message that I would say is, don't adopt that old mentality of, I'll coin the phrase, suck it up, buttercup. We've all heard it. For me personally, I don't think that's something that works well anymore. We're all individual. We all deal with things differently and stress. But the truth of the matter is, this is something that has been studied and proven. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to shed a tear and to tell somebody. And it doesn't matter who it is. It could be a colleague that you work with. It doesn't have to be a quote unquote peer support member, because really we all are peer support.
The live rescues all happened in the first few hours of the incident. After that, the search for survivors was actually a search for the deceased, and it was a search for body parts. Because of the safety clothing that firefighters wear, it's heavy duty and so on. As firefighters were found in the pile by other firefighters, it was typically body parts. And when they found human remains, there was an audible sound that was put out. It changed over the course, but air horn kind of sounds that everybody recognized, and all work would stop on the pile. No matter what you're doing, you'd stop, and there'd be basically a long moment of silence as those remains were removed and taken over to the refrigerated trucks that were the temporary morgue. Some of the examples that I would give you were, New York firefighters coming up and grabbing me and hugging me and thanking me for being there as a representative of my agency, and crying all over me, are difficult memories, even here 21 years later.
First female fire chief, Chief Kristen Crowley, she has a lot of history with this, and she definitely is supporting this movement and pushing it forward. Those of us that came on back, the baby boomers, as we attrition out, the younger generations are coming in, they seem to be a little bit more open to speaking about these types of things, these emotional things, and they're not so bottled up. We were there to help, but it was so sensitive, so raw, and just so different. I mean, we didn't know, nobody had experienced that like on that level.
The way that the memorial got to Los Angeles was a personal friend of mine, Jeff New, was involved on the commercial side of cleaning up the World Trade Center location. His family owned one of the largest steel recycling companies in the country. Jeff is from New York. The incident was very, very personal to him, and we were already friends, and he knew that I had been back there. So Jeff levered and cajoled me to do something to recognize the response of the Los Angeles Fire Department to the incident. What that turned into was me saying that I would accept a piece of the debris steel from the incident. I'd find a way to put some kind of a monument up here in Los Angeles. I thought that would probably be an 8-foot piece of steel or something that would go on some kind of a pedestal with a nice little plaque on it. What Jeff had in mind was different. In fact, that turned out to be a 27-foot long, 23-ton piece of the South Trade Center. He sent me an email with an attached picture of a lowboy 14-wheeler leaving New York with that on it. He told me that would figure out a way to do it. That was my job. Fire department, the city of Los Angeles said we could do it. We could build a monument, but there could be no taxpayer money involved and no on-duty effort to do it. So a group of volunteers on their off-duty time for we firefighters and a number of private companies stepped up and made the project happen. It's located at the former Navy and Marine Corps Reserve Center, which is now the Los Angeles Fire Department's downtown training center, known as the Frank Hodgkins Memorial Training Center.
And when you start noticing things that are happening in your daily life, you're having arguments at home, or you're just really short-tempered, maybe you have to take something to help you sleep, whatever it is, those are really important signs that things are getting to you. Find somebody to talk to, and don't be afraid. There's so much available nowadays that weren't available to us many years ago.
The Critical Incident Stress Management Program has evolved a lot over the last 30 years. It exists in virtually all public safety departments, police and fire. And I'll play back to something that a New York chief said to me as we were leaving. He took me aside and said, "Hey, Dave, I know you're a member of both of your Los Angeles teams, meaning the Urban Search and Rescue team and the Critical Incident Management team." And he said, "I want you to know that the team that you were here with and the other like teams undoubtedly saved more lives long-term than any of the urban search and rescue teams were able to do, despite all of their training and capability, because the emotional impact on the responders for that incident was so high that it was predictable that there were going to be suicides and divorces and all those things that were going to happen." Over the last 21 years since that event, the Critical Incident Stress Management team has saved the psychological health of unknown amounts, but lots of public safety responders.
We have to continue to recognize it every year and to pay homage to it, and be very sensitive to it and have that moment of silence, or whatever it is. It's just really important. And we won't ever forget, ever. I won't. I can still tear up and cry about it because it is raw, and you can't change it.
We've talked about the monument. It's amazing how many people don't realize that it's even there. Part of it's like everything else, that what's close to you, you kind of forget about. There's all the public locations, the historical locations and all of that stuff that you never even looked at. But this is the largest attack on American territory that's ever occurred in history. This monument is the only touchstone of its size on the West Coast, and it's there and open to the public. For you first responders, all of us said, we'll never forget. 343 firefighters died there, about 100 police officers died there. Take the time, take the moment to come up and visit the monument and connect with what those people put on the line.